Imagine an exciting and vibrant sex life. Imagine your body in tune with your desires. Now imagine this for a lifetime. Our reality is different. 20% of couples are in sexless marriages. Over a third of people in relationships are sexually unfulfilled. Women are twice as likely as men to be bored with their sex lives. And get this, erectile dysfunction goes up by 10% for every decade of life. Now we can understand 80% of 80-year-olds suffering from erectile dysfunction, but 20% of 20-year-olds? Now that just sounds absurd, doesn't it? It certainly sounded absurd to me. But one night I was working in the ER, and I was running between heart attacks and strokes and abdominal pains and screaming children, and I pick up a chart, and I look at the chief complaint, and it says, cannot get erection. And I'm looking around thinking, is somebody playing a prank on me? Because this cannot be seriously an ER complaint. What's the emergency? So I walk into the room, and I see a man who is absolutely slumped over. He's dejected, he's on the verge of tears, and to him this is an emergency, and it isn't a joke at all. His girlfriend had dumped him because he was unable to perform sexually yet again, and she told him, "You aren't man enough." Can you imagine that? Now I'm standing there as an ER doctor feeling helpless because, like other doctors who don't specialize in sexual medicine, I simply didn't have the tools to help him. So as I stood there that night, the 20% of 20-year-olds, I believed that. And it changed the course of my career. I went from being an ER doctor to becoming Dr. Sex Fairy, and now standing before you today. So if you think about it, what is causing people to suffer from all this sexual dysfunction? I think denial is the number one reason you're suffering. Men suffer from erectile dysfunction for years, if not decades, before they seek help for it in most cases. In fact, when they come to my office, finally, they still say, "Oh, I'm not that bad yet." I'm not sure what they're waiting for, but women, we are so much worse because for us, a little bit of lube and a lot of fake oohs and ahs in the bedroom can hide a lot of dysfunction. But who are we kidding? This fake it till you make it mentality isn't helping us because if you fake it, you'll never make it. Next, let's talk about stress, baby. Emotional stress is what we think about when we think about stress. But what about chemical stress? Chemical stress can be really anything from your hormones being out of balance to even BPAs and plastics. Something as simple as that can cause you to have infertility and loss of function. And what about physical stress? Any chronic or acute illness can cause stress on your body. In fact, blockages in blood vessels are the number one cause of ED worldwide. But what happens when you go to your doctor? More often than not, you are given a prescription for a little blue pill. Not much is done to find out why you have the dysfunction to begin with. And then, for a short while, your function may improve. And you think, whoa, I'm better, because nobody actually told you that that pill isn't solving your problem, it is simply masking it. And why does this happen? You see, blockages, as I said, are the number one cause people are having ED. If you aren't doing anything about the blockages, they're getting worse over time. So eventually, the medicine stops working. Then there's physical atrophy. We are aging, and normal wear and tear happens. And then guess what? If you aren't having sex, or sex regularly, your body retires itself, and then it's a case of use it or lose it. Sex-related injuries. I saw plenty of these in the ER. But this is a real thing. I mean, we may laugh about it, joke about it, they have TV shows about it, but this causes problems. Now, if you think about it, people joke about a broken penis. You can't really break a penis because there isn't a bone to break, but you can certainly injure it. So a penis goes from standing upright to having a little kink in it. And then over time, because you didn't fix it, that kink gets worse. Why? Because right here, plaque forms. And over time, it gets worse. And then imagine trying to perform like that. It's a little difficult, technical difficulty right there. And then ED starts to happen because blood flow gets restricted. And eventually, the penis starts to shrink. What is a person to do? I mean, it's such a mess out there, right? First, let's talk about Jim and Cindy. They came to my office several years ago. Cindy was 70, Jim was 69. They had recently met, and they were in love. They had desire, but not as much function as they wanted. Cindy had been a widow for many years, and she had a few other medical problems as well, and things weren't going so great. Jim was pushing 70 himself. So how did they go from dysfunction to this picture of sexual connection and vitality? I mean, look at them. That's quite a picture, right? Let's go to what I call mind over mattress. Forget mind over matter, that's for the others. So people talk about biohacking, but what really is biohacking? Biohacking, simply put, is living a longer and healthier life. But what about our sex span? If we are going to live longer, shouldn't we also be having a more fun time of it? What you believe, you become. If you think your best sex life is behind you, or if you think it's ahead of you, you are 100% right. Because your most important sexual organ is never your penis or vagina, it's your brain. Wayne Dyer said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And he was right. What you eat matters. And we talk about diet when we think about cardiac health and things like that, but sexual health and cardiac health are very, very closely related. I am not here to tell you to follow any particular diet. Keto, vegan, it's a mess out there. Pick a diet that is healthy, that's sensible, and that works for you. A diet that you can maintain. Short, Band-Aids, like I talked about earlier, aren't going to help you long term. Obese men are 50% more likely to suffer from erectile dysfunction. So if you won't do it for your heart, do it for your sex life. And ladies, we have the same plumbing. Exterior may be a little different, but our blood vessels need a healthy diet just as much. Now, we again talk about sleep hygiene, sleep health. I mean, you hear it everywhere nowadays. But how does sleep affect your sex life? Well, testosterone is the most important sexual hormone out there. I mean, there's estrogen, of course, but men and women both need testosterone. You need it for your function, you need it for your libido, just about everything. And it is released primarily as you sleep. So if you're not sleeping, you are not having very good sex. It's just that simple. But for us ladies, of course, it has to be even more complicated, like everything else. So we have perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. When we have childbirth, our hormones are going crazy as well. So when a woman is thrashing about in bed at night, unable to sleep, sweating, she is clearly too tired to have a good sex life, but she's also not making enough testosterone. And then let's talk about exercise. Again, everybody thinks of exercise as general health, cardiac health, but you need it for your sexual health, not just for function, but also libido. They did a study about this topic, actually. It's very interesting. It's a funny study. There was a group of women, premenopausal, sexually active women, and they decided to show them a regular movie. And then they show them an erotic movie. And then they check them for sexual arousal. I know, just work with me. And it's a crazy, crazy thought, but just work with me. So they checked them for arousal. And then they made them exercise vigorously on a stationary bike for 20 minutes. And 15 minutes later, they tested them again. Now these ladies were aroused and ready to go. So here's my expert advice. Skip the roses. Buy her an exercise bike. You're welcome. So, sexual medicine isn't what it used to be. There have been so many advances just in the time I've been a doctor that it makes my mind spin 5 ways. I wish I'd had these tools for that young 23-year-old in the ER that night, but Jim and Cindy are having a good time. I was talking to them on my podcast, and I was trying to calculate how many times a year they have sex. It's impressive. And Jim said to me, "We aren't just having a lot of sex, we are having good sex." I want you to remember that you are not alone when it comes to sexual dysfunction or problems. I also want you to stop denying this to yourselves, to your partner, to your doctor. It's time to be honest about this. Simple lifestyle changes. I'm not telling you to reinvent the wheel. Simple things. And seek expert help when you need it. Maya Angelou said, "When you know better, do better." So I want you to go out and claim your sex ban. Thank you.